Welcome to the Ease into Retirement podcast. I'm Tom Mosley, your host, and I promise you, if you will give me 15 minutes, I'll do my best to build your financial knowledge. Well, welcome to our podcast. We're into our 20s now, I believe 21 or 22. Very excited about some of you who like our podcast and subscribe to it and some of the comments you've made. If you've got a suggestion for a future podcast, then shoot me an email, tom@easeintoretirement.com, and I'll do my best to work it into our scheduling and find out the information I need to find out, or just give you the information that I already know, and I'll be glad to do that. I'm here to build your educational financial knowledge, and I want to do everything I can to educate you. I try to break things down a little bit of a handicap, and that I don't have a screen to show you and a board to draw things off on. If you've ever sat in my office for an appointment, you know that I like to do stuff like that. So today we are going to start building the elements of a real retirement plan, the elements of a retirement plan. And if you're building a house to live in retirement, and I'm not talking about a physical house, but a financial house, that financial house for retirement has to start with a foundation of income. Now, income is so important to us all along. You know, you got a job when you were 16 years old. I did, working in a grocery store, and pretty much worked in a grocery store often until I was 20, 21 years old, and worked in it from time to time a little bit later. I've done stuff like valet parked. I've painted houses. I've mowed lawns and had my own lawn business. I've done just about everything. I was in the ministry. I sold rascal scooters and helped people get along. Done a lot of things, but every single time I got a job, I was concerned about how much income I was going to have, because it takes income to live off of. You have to have income to pay the bills. And the nice thing is, even though many times we bounce around from job to job to job when we're starting out, and I guess some people bounce around quite a while, but the nice thing is that usually you settled down and you got into what you would consider maybe your main career, or maybe you didn't, but you always needed income and had income to actually put food on the table. And that food was on the table and it sustained you. And then if you made income enough and you made well enough with your income, you were able to start saving money, maybe into a 401k, or maybe your company had a pension, and then all along you were paying into Social Security, and you started saving money into an IRA or a Roth IRA, but it all came off of your income. Now, you get ready to retire, and once a week or twice a month or once a month, or ever how often you got paid, the real scary thing is when you decide to say no to that company, when you decide to say no to working, and you decide to take that step of faith out into retirement, the scary thing is you're leaving that job that provided you income, which is the foundational element of everything you've had in life and everything you will have in life, and you walk out that door. There's a couple of things going to happen. Number one, the door locks in most cases unless your name's on the building, and you can't go back in. You can't say a month later or 2 months later, hey, I made a big mistake. I need to go back in because I don't have enough income. And the other thing is, if you stay out, there's no paycheck coming. Oh, maybe you've got a severance pay, a severance package. Maybe you've got some stored up vacation pay. And I've seen some people get paid for up to a year income. But eventually, when you leave that job and you go into retirement, then you no longer have income. Now, if you prepared properly, it's not really a scary thing, because you have built up in that IRA, 401k, savings, pensions, rental houses, you built into Social Security. All of those things have built up a certain amount of investments. And when I have an extended period of time to teach this, I teach you that all of those things, the 401k, 403bs, IRAs, Roth IRAs, all of those things are like the building blocks of building a real financial house to live in retirement. But the most important thing you've got to do once you leave the job and you no longer get that paycheck from the company that you work for is you've got to transform or convert that investment pot of money that you've got into substantial income enough to make sure that your ends are met, that the means that you need to survive are there. When people come to us in our office, we always ask them, what's the major reason that you want to meet with us? What's the biggest thing we can solve? And about 80% of the time is, are we going to have enough money to retire? And then when you follow-up questions is, will we have enough income? And will it last is the third question, as long as we're alive. And then another big question that you've got to consider when it comes to income, will it last as long as the second one of us are alive if you're married? If you're single, you just want it to last as long as you do and maybe pass on whatever you have left to your heirs. But if you're married, you want to make sure that not only you have enough income, but it's going to last as long as you last, but it's also going to last as long as your spouse lasts. Now, where do we get the income? Well, most people, not everyone, but most people have the built-in advantage of having paid in to the Social Security system. So depending on how much you've paid in, and there's all kind of rules there that I don't want to go into, catch one of my Social Security workshops that we're now beginning to put on the schedule for particularly the late summer and fall. But catch one of those workshops where we teach people how to maximize their Social Security. And it's not just wait till you're 70, but how do you get the most income out of your Social Security? Now, a lot of people have been negatively turned off about these vehicles, but they don't like annuities. But your Social Security is an annuity, no matter how you like to see it. It's a plan that is going to pay you, and it's got a built-in increasing income, and I think it's going to be guaranteed by the government. I don't think they're going to do away with it, but it's going to be guaranteed increasing income as we have cost of living raises, and it's going to last as long as you do. I mean, the Social Security is a really nice pot of money. If you consider that if you make $3,000 a month, let's do the math, and that's $36,000 a year, and if you live for 20 years in retirement, $36,000 a year, if you hit that $3,000 mark, you're going to end up with $720,000 even without cost of living increases year to year to year. So don't minimize or denigrate Social Security. It's actually a really nice income.
Hey folks, thank you for listening to today's episode of the Ease into Retirement podcast with Tom Mosley. Just a quick reminder that if anything you've heard so far today has hit home for you, maybe it's something you're dealing with, maybe it's just something you want to learn a little bit more about, there will be a complimentary downloadable giveaway on Tom's website specifically prepared for this week's episode that you should check out. Just go to easepodcast.com. That's EASE podcast.com. Click the button with the title of this week's episode and get your copy today. Now I'll throw it back to Tom.
One of the statistics on some of the classes that I teach on the college campuses and the 4-hour classes that I teach in community centers and libraries shows that 33 to 42% of the normal person in America's retirement income is going to come from Social Security. So you want to make sure you're getting good advice and good input, and you can't really get that necessarily from the Social Security office when you go down and you meet with them. You've got to get that from somebody who really wants to maximize your Social Security. Down at the Social Security office, a lot of those people are really good people, but all they're trained how to do is how to turn on your Social Security. And they're not there to give you advice. They're there to give you information. But there's a big difference in information and advice. With information, you've got to ask the right questions. And many times we find people don't even know how to ask the right questions, and they don't even know the particular little quirky rules that Social Security might have in different areas, and they don't even know how to ask the right questions. And so they're not really getting advice They're getting information. And don't assume that that person that gives you advice or information at the Social Security office is necessarily trained in it. They just know what they're taught to do. And in most cases, they know how to turn on your Social Security. Now, that's if you have one Social Security. If you're married, then you have two Social Securities to consider. So when you start to build that foundation of retirement income that we're talking about today, you also want to make sure that the advice you get from a financial planner, somebody who's trained in Social Security, like we are at our place. You want to make sure that you're getting advice that considers not just your Social Security, but if you're married, your spouse, and get a load of this if you're single. You also may need to get advice on what your ex-spouse is earning. If you've been married 10 years, were married to them 10 years and you got a divorce and you're no longer married to them and you've never been married again since that time, you may be able to play off of your ex-spouse. So make sure you're getting not just the information to the questions you're asking, but you're getting good, solid advice so you can maximize your Social Security in the best way possible for you. Now, don't be fooled though. A lot of people, I've had a lady one time came in about 7 or 8 years ago, and she put all of her stuff down on the desk and she started crying. And her name was Gladys. And I said, Gladys, what's wrong? I thought maybe she'd stubbed her toe, hurt herself, or was in pain. And she said, I did my budget last night. I'm 64 years old and I can't believe I'm $400 short every single month. That's why my savings are being drained. So I said, well, don't worry about it. That's what we're here to try to help you. And I began to delve into her paperwork. And when we got to Social Security, I asked her, I said, how long have you been taking this $1,400 a month? It wasn't huge, but this $1,400 a month that you're getting for Social Security. And I was shocked that she said, well, I'm not taking Social Security. Now, mind you, she's 64. She's eligible for $1,400 a month. And I said, well, Gladys, why are you not taking Social Security if you're $400 a month short? And she said, well, I went to a Social Security maximization dinner seminar one time, and they told me that under no circumstances should I take my Social Security before I'm 70 years old. I said, Gladys, that was not good advice for you. And here's what you need to know. I say this often on the podcast. Any information that I give you is not ever to be construed as individual tax, legal, investment, or gardening advice. I'm here to give you general information. And when I say, obviously, if you live to 85 and you wait till 70 to take your Social Security, you're going to make more money. But if you live to 70 and you starve because you're having to eat dirt, because you're $400 under each month, that's not a good thing to do. I told this lady, to make a long story short, I said, Gladys, run down to the Social Security office, start taking your Social Security. And she looked at me and she said, I'd have $1,000 extra a month. I could travel and do some of the things that I want to do. Absolutely. And that's what I mean by advice versus information. If you want to maximize your Social Security, easy. Wait till you're 70 and live a long time. But if you want to do what's best for you and get the best advice for you, somebody's got to consider what's your budget now? What amount of money is coming in and all of those things. So don't just take the simple answer, because your answer needs to be specific to you. Let's talk a little bit about pensions. Other sources of income could be pensions. Other sources of income could be rental property. If you've got rental property and you like the rental property and it's not making you pull your hair out, then maybe rental property could be another source of income. I really am not keen, because I've seen so many people do it unsuccessfully, and people taking a big chunk of money and buying rental property, because it creates a whole nother headache. You've got the maintenance, you've got the upkeep, you've got people coming in and destroying your house and then moving out. And maybe they were only in there for a year, and you've got to find another person, and it takes you a month or two to repair the house, and you've got to pay insurance, and you've got to pay taxes on it. So understand, if you do rental property, it's okay. If you've got it, it's great. because you understand it and you've got it in the flow of everything you're doing. But if you just want to start rental property in retirement, I've really seen it turn out in some negative ways in most of the cases, because there's much more to it than just buying a house and getting a check every month. There's a lot to it. So those are the sources of income, the major sources: Social Security, pensions. We can talk about annuities, which are another form of annuity. Is not just Social Security, which is an annuity, a pension, which is an annuity, and there's different ways to turn that on. I've already covered that in a previous podcast. You might want to go back and check out the different ways to really get the most out of your pension and make sure you're making the right decisions there. That's where the income comes from. Now, next time, in part 2 of this foundation of income and building a retirement house and building a retirement plan, I want to talk about your budget and how you address the gap. And that's where we'll talk about various options. From you say, I've got enough Social Security for this, and I don't have a pension, and I don't have any rentals, and I've got a gap here of $1,200, but I do have these investments. How do I transfer those investments into vehicles that'll give me increasing income for the rest of my life and maybe even be insured by an insurance company? We'll cover that next time. Now, if you like this podcast, share it with a friend. If you can go on to Apple and Google and the different ways you can get the podcast, and you can subscribe to it so you get a notification every week that it's coming out. It always comes out on Thursday. Let me know your thoughts. Go to easepodcast.com. Go to Tom at easeintoretirement.com. You can reach me that way, or you can call us with ideas or questions or ideas for a new podcast at 714-421-4288. So listen, until next time, this is the Ease Into Retirement podcast. I'm Tom Mosley. I promise you, if you'll give me around 15 minutes, I'll do my best every single week to build your financial knowledge.
Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services. Ed Slott's IRA Advisor Group is a paid membership educational organization comprised of professionals of varying credentials. Membership in this organization does not imply a set level of skill or training. The logo and or service mark is the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement of Tom Mosley is stated or implied.
A Roth conversion is a taxable event and may have several tax-related consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.